Hey Internet, Harris here. So there's two new iPads that have come out recently that may be oriented towards students, and I want to see which one might be the best for you. I've been testing out the iPad mini 6th generation for several weeks, along with the iPad 9th generation. I've done dedicated reviews of both of these, so you can watch those separately to get all the in-depth details as well as tips and tricks videos for both of them, so you can check out kind of all four of those videos. But in this video, I want to see which one might be right for the average student. We're going to go over different use case scenarios, and this video is presented by Panoval with their Panoval A4 Pro Stylus, which pretty much emulates an Apple Pencil for about a quarter of the cost. So let's go ahead and get started with this review. So a few questions I want to ask at the beginning of this video for you to kind of think about when you're looking at these two devices. One would be, do you intend on using this with a mouse and a keyboard, kind of like a laptop? Second, in a similar vein, do you intend on typing out notes or working on essays or other papers with a keyboard on this iPad? Three, do you have a Mac already? Is it, 14, 15, 16 inches or above, or maybe even a desktop computer? And finally, is this going to be your main note-taking machine? Are you going to use a stylus to write out notes or a keyboard to type notes? Or are you still going to use paper and pencil or still use your laptop for notes? Those are four questions that will kind of change how important the differences between these two iPads are for students. So I just want to get it out of the way. In terms of sheer value, I think that the iPad 9th generation takes the cake. For $299 with a student discount and different price points depending on when and where you get it, and of course I'll leave some links down below to check it out, I think this just gets the job very well. And this year Apple doubled the base storage from 32 to 64 gigabytes, so now more than ever you can get by with the base model of this iPad. 64 gigabytes is just about fine for plenty of notes, plenty of documents, and pretty much any small apps that you want to use. If you start loading on tons and tons of videos and heavier apps, 64 gigs could be a problem, and if you have your entire photos library stored locally, that's probably going to be an issue. But I think for the most part, 64 gigabytes is now a great place to start with this iPad. The iPad mini also starts at 64 gigs, so keep that in mind. And if you want to throw on a keyboard, because Apple does make a great keyboard for this iPad that you can just flip around the back or detach easily, or if you want to add on a stylus, whether it be the Panoval stylus or Apple's own or something else, you can get that whole package for less than $500, aka less than just the iPad mini alone. So if you're going just for budget and just for basic purposes and you just want an iPad with the necessary accessories to really use it fully in terms of note-taking and more, this just gets it done for a good price point. And that's because this is not a flashy iPad at all. This design is several years old. The internals are several years old. And Apple just gives you kind of the bare minimum with this iPad to keep it at that lower price point. It's not amazing hardware, but it is a pretty solid value, especially relative to more expensive iPads. Now next, with this iPad, the screen size is 10.2 inches, which isn't massive, but is much bigger than 8.3 inches of the iPad mini. So that means that multitasking is going to be pretty comfortable. If you're using this with a keyboard or a mouse, or even without, you can easily have up Safari on the left and Notes on the right, or Notability, or Google Drive, or whatever you want. And you can get some pretty good multitasking action with this iPad with this slightly bigger screen size. So that's really nice. And additionally, when you're multitasking, it's still pretty comfortable to take notes on this screen size. It doesn't feel like you're compromising too much when you have 2 or 3 apps open and still writing down notes with your stylus. And where the screen difference comes out the most, I think, would be with e-text reading. When I'm reading a textbook on the iPad, it definitely helps to have this slightly bigger screen. Now, there are some major advantages of the iPad mini. Obviously, it's portability. This can go in my oversized coat pocket in the winter, which is awesome. It also means that you can throw it in any bag and it just slips so easily into your backpack. If you're carrying around your Mac with you already, this is hardly going to add any more bulk or weight to your backpack, and it just slips in even kind of more streamlined than a typical book would. Certainly any textbook, this slides in your bag super easily, and you can basically forget about it. And if you're working on a small desk, one of those seat desks in a classroom, and you have maybe a book open to your side or a piece of paper, This will fit very nicely on that desk, won't take up too much space, and it's great for just staying out of the way, staying in a small pocket, staying on a corner of a desk, especially in conjunction with a laptop or a desktop. This iPad also supports the Apple Pencil 2, so if you're not on a tight budget, because, well, that changes a lot, but if you're not on a tight budget, the Apple Pencil 2 is amazing. It supports magnetic charging on the iPad and the double tap feature and pressure sensitivity, so it's definitely nicer than the Apple Pencil 1, which is supported on this iPad. And again, it just has that instant pairing and charging to your iPad, as well as just a more comfortable design and a little bit better latency, a little bit lower latency. If you are taking notes, which I know so many students do with their iPad, you're going to want a stylus unless you just plan on typing everything, because, well, when you use a stylus, it does stay in your head better. So you can get the Apple Pencil, which is $129 for the second gen or $99 for the first gen, or you can get the Panoval A4, which is actually the sponsor of this episode, and it's actually a product that I love, not just because it's sponsored, but because I do use it often. So this gives you many of the same benefits of an Apple Pencil. It snaps magnetically to the iPad mini, or you can use the magnetic accessory to attach it to your iPad 9. It does support tilt shifting, so you can get different thickness when you're sketching based off how you're tilting it. It has a double tap feature up top to turn it on and off, and it has several color indicators to let you know the battery life. It should last about 6 hours of usage, but with 6 minutes of charging, you can get an hour of use, and it's super, super precise. The tip on it works super well, and it basically feels as good as a Logitech Crayon or the Apple Pencil first generation when it comes to writing. So if you want to get a stylus for a third to a quarter of the cost of the Apple Pencil, this one is kind of a no-brainer. It seriously is a really solid product, and I'll leave it linked down below. And it also works really nicely if you're kind of thinking about it as a notepad. So I remember a couple occasions that I, gave a presentation, and this worked kind of perfectly for just reading notes off that for my presentation, especially if you throw on a nice slim cover. It's just a really compact device. But secondly, also for jotting down notes when I'm in a presentation, you can use the quick note feature to just swipe up from the bottom corner, and you can pull up a note instantly and just start jotting away. Very simple, very discreet, not obtrusive in any ways to use this as a notepad. And I also love this for Kindle books. This is basically the size of a Kindle. So if we're reading ebooks, which I don't know too many people that read ebooks in college, and this is different than the textbook because I do prefer textbooks on the larger screen of the iPad. But in terms of Kindle books, if you are a Kindle user and want to use this for the Kindle book or the Apple Books app, this screen size is great for that. You also get a few other bonus features with this iPad. You get a better speaker system. You get stereo audio coming from both sides instead of just one, but most college students are using AirPods or headphones anyway. You get a really nice 4K camera with flash on the back. So if you do want to use this for video purposes, for filming a quick video or whatever you want to do, you do have that advantage with this camera. It's really nice. And both of these support center stage and super wide angle front-facing cameras with higher resolution than ever. This iPad also has a laminated display, which means that when you are taking notes, what you are pressing onto the screen, your stylus, feels like it's going directly into the software underneath. It's kind of how I describe it. Whereas with this iPad, you feel a bit of a display gap between the actual glass and what's showing up on the iPad. It feels like there's a little bit of hollowness, and you can also hear it. It's a little bit louder when you're tapping on the iPad versus the iPad mini. Although a matte screen protector does really help if you're taking notes on this iPad, and I can leave some linked down below if you're interested in a matte screen protector. And then the iPad mini does have USB-C, which I don't think most people will care about. I personally do, because I can throw in a USB-C hub and I can connect a microphone for recording audio for this video or for recording audio for a podcast. I can also plug in an SD card really easily with USB-C, or finally I could charge something like my Garmin or an Apple Watch or my iPhone or my AirPods right from the USB port on the iPad mini, so my iPad can function kind of as an external battery pack in my backpack, which is really handy. And just in general, this iPad mini is going to be faster, significantly faster, and more smooth than the iPad 9. If you're using this just for notes, it doesn't really matter that much, but if you're using it for maybe doing a little bit of editing of video or photo editing or just general usage and gaming, you're going to want more performance. But if you're just going for the basics, this gets the job done without being super fast or flashy, but it works nonetheless. But a major downside of the iPad mini for me is twofold. One is that this device is so small, which is a big plus, but the downside of that is that keyboards aren't super functional with this. There aren't many keyboard cases out there. You'd have to buy an external keyboard, which is usable, but that's extra bulk, and there's not a really effective way of using a keyboard with this iPad. So for typing documents and emails and essays and things like that, this iPad is not super convenient for that, although it's pretty comfortable to type with two hands. But you're gonna have to carry around an external mouse if you want to use that with this. And again, that really takes away from some of the simplicity and portability of this iPad. So I do prefer something like the iPad 9 when it comes to typing, writing documents, taking notes, and using a mouse with it. It's much more organic with this iPad. You can get Apple's case without the trackpad, or Logitech's case with the trackpad and a function row and backlighting. So you do get some options and flexibility with this iPad, especially because you'd have more room to spend money on accessories. And then the smaller screen size means that taking notes on it is fine. It's a little bit small and cramped, but you can zoom in and use the enlarge feature on Notability and GoodNotes and stuff like that. But if you have a split screen going, it does make the second half of the screen pretty small for taking notes. So it does work, I think, as a kind of primary notepad, but once you start going into split screen, which is an amazing feature, you do run out of screen real estate. So I kind of think of the iPad 9 as a great device if you're going to be typing and using a stylus and you just want more accessories for less money. But the iPad mini is great for portability. It works great if you already have a laptop and you want to use it in conjunction with that, and you don't mind the smaller screen or perhaps the cramped note-taking. So I think I'd probably recommend the iPad 9 more because it is just so economical. You can get tons of accessories plus the iPad for the price of just the iPad mini alone. I want to know your thoughts. Let me know in the comments down below, and thank you so much for watching.